Hi, so quick introduction. This is the initial build of Gordon with a Wesseco piston and a ported head. After 3 years of racing, it was time for an engine refresh with some upgrades. One of which was the Nova Racing gear, as you can see in the top left. This was a gear reduction to increase acceleration in 5th gear. Here I am assembling the gear selector mechanism. Above is the Carrillo Racing comrod. This comrod is much stronger than the original and be able to withstand the new punishment. Another common upgrade for these engines is to replace the balanced drive gear with a solid one. This comes from a Raptor 700 engine. Here I am torquing up the nuts for the balance shaft and crankshaft drive gears. It's always good to make sure that the engine is still turning after these major processes. I would not recommend using a screwdriver to lock gears together, but I feared that the original clutch would not be able to handle the new horsepower, so I went from the 5-spring to a 6-spring slipper clutch from a British company, Sigma. The slipper will stop me from locking up the rear wheel when braking heavily, and also protect all of my fancy new engine parts from blowing up if I change down too fast. Here I am trying to work out how to lock the basket so I can tighten the central nut. I tightened it off screen and now I continue with the assembly. With the clutch and gearbox installed, it's next time to move on to gapping the piston rings. When gapping the rings, for this level of tune you have to go slightly over the manufacturer's spec. I think for this engine I went for roughly 0.4 mil on the top 2 rings. The oil rings can stay the same. I didn't record the entire process as it takes quite a long time, so I'm only showing the top ring being set here. At this point I am installing the Carrillo 11:1 compression 686cc piston that I purchased for this build. After oiling the piston and rings, I now move on to orienting the open ends of the rings to the correct position according to manufacturer spec. Shortly I ask for Rusty Nut's assistance in securing the engine so I can tighten the head bolts down to torque spec. Here comes my friend Jordan, just as I'm fitting the head. Before I do that, I explained to him how you use plasticine to measure the piston to valve clearance. This is a must-do when building engines with high-performance parts. For valve gear, I went for Kibblewhite's racing valve kit. This kit includes lighter valves and valve tops, and also a dual heavier spring setup, which will reduce valve float. Thankfully, Jord arrived early for going to the pub, so I had him on standby to help me tighten the head bolts. Now I'm installing the special-made Kent Cams Stage 3 camshaft that was developed with Kent Cams and slipstream tuning. There is a backstory to how I got hold of this camshaft, but I won't get into that. All that's left is to install the rocker cover and set the valve clearances. I will also mention that I upgraded the sprag clutch to an LNL Extreme sprag clutch. This clutch is lighter and much stronger grip than the original. And after all that, here is the result.